this as well.
So hello, folks. We are live. I'm just going to put us on live Alpha Geek real quick, and then we will get started. Thursday show.
Thursday, June 4th.
Yes.
A notable day in American history. Today is, let's see, the
What years of it?
1942.
Yeah,
The 73rd anniversary of the Battle of Midway.
that's correct.
Yep. The turning point in the Pacific War 6 months after Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
Yep.
And a very good 70s war movie.
Oh, great movie. Yeah, that's a really I love old school war movies, and that's one of my favorite.
Now looking back on it, it's funny, but I can understand. Like I'm not a parent, but I can, and you'll understand this as being a parent, how scary this would have been to my mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
I was 7 years old. I loved war movies. I stole $1 out of my mom's purse because I wanted to go see Midway at the theaters, which was like maybe 3 blocks away. And so I did. Went to the afternoon show. This was during the summer.
Right.
And they were scared out of their mind because they didn't know where I was, and I'm sitting in the movie. And of course they go through their mental Rolodex and say, "I'll bet you anything he's at the movie." They ended up finding me in the theater and pulling me out and grounding me for a week because but I can just imagine how scared they were. Where the hell is he? What's going on? And I'm sitting in the theater. Funny thing is, I was 7 years old, and I'm pretty sure that was a PG movie.
That's not a 7-year-old movie, man.
Yeah, but hey,
7-year-olds should be watching.
When I was a kid, I watched Looney Tunes and I watched The World at War. So I liked history and I liked cartoons. So there you go.
What you call it's a great The Great Escape is one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly's Heroes is actually probably one of my top 5 favorite movies. And I was actually thinking if you wanted to remake a movie, that'd probably be a good one to remake.
Yeah, but that's tough because I
know.
Look at the cast of Kelly's Heroes. You had Don Rickles, Telly Savalas, Donald Sutherland, and Clint Eastwood.
We're not the United States Army. We're a private enterprise.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, in a way, and it was a bad attempt, and it wasn't the same thing. But that Monuments Men movie.
Yeah, I saw that movie. Yeah, it was disappointing.
It was disappointing, but it had sort of no, it wasn't bad, but it had sort of a Kelly's Heroes feel to it.
That's what they tried for, and it just didn't work.
Right.
Actually, I saw the documentary on the real life story of the platoon trying to save the art, and the documentary was 1,000 times more compelling than the movie was.
Wow, that's like the Eastwood movie that he made a few years ago. About the Iwo Jima, the soldiers who raised the flag on Iwo Jima.
Yep.
That movie was okay. Didn't do great at the box office. The movie that did much better was sort of like his side project, the Letters from Iwo Jima, that was about the Japanese who were defending the island, and that movie got nominated for Best Actor and Best Picture.
Right.
So that was the one that got all the publicity, whereas the Flags of Our Fathers didn't.
Right.
So.
All right, sorry guys, I'm ready. I got this new headphone thing, Jigger.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And because my sound's been weird unless I'm on my microphone, and I have this, and it came with weird connectors. I thought it would be a lot easier to set up, but it came with like mini HDMI connectors.
Oh.
Which I don't have a way, and it has this. This is a 1/8 inch. I don't have a 1/4 inch adapter, so I'm trying to figure out. I know I have tons of adapters around here, but I can't find them. Okay.
Yeah, that looks like me trying to hook up. I have an iPod with about 3,500 songs, and my CD player, which it's ridiculous to try to even play a CD player anymore. It's like hooking up an 8-track. Well, I wanted to hook up my iPod to my stereo, and I have a receiver that's 10 years old, and it doesn't have a USB port.
Right.
So I'm plugging in left and right channel wires into a 2x1 prong that's going into my iPod. It's like the weirdest connection of all time, but it actually worked. Although for some reason the vocal is not as prominent when I have it through this vast connection than it would normally be. So
Spotify might be one of the greatest inventions in modern history.
Spotify, yeah.
It's amazing. It's perfect. It makes iTunes irrelevant.
Yeah. I mean,
what I like about it is it's a streaming service, much like Pandora, but you also can save your own songs and create your own playlists and share them.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah, so it's like it's basically a combination of like a Pandora and an iTunes together. It's great. I make my own playlist. If anybody watching, follow me on Spotify. I have a nice hockey mix on there.
Oh, cool.
A lot of Dave Mishkin audio, the Tampa Bay.
Oh no, more like Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I've never heard somebody more depressed than Dave Mishkin last night when Chicago scored to make it 2-1. They played it on Toronto radio this morning, and it was basically, he goes apoplectic when they score.
That's what they want. They specifically want that.
Right,
yeah.
but when Chicago scores, it's like shot scores. I mean, it's just like that.
The funny thing about that broadcast is actually, in my opinion, is Phil Esposito in the back.
Yes, it's amazing. It sounds like you were watching a game with like your drunk uncle.
Yeah, exactly. He's constantly throwing things out.
It's great.
But the problem is that, and I heard it this morning. Phil sees the goal going in and undercuts Michigan.
He can't help himself.
Right. He's like Michigan's like, pass to Teravainen, and you hear right before he says scores, you hear it's in the net. It's like,
right.
Phil, shut up.
The best is like I was listening. I forget which game it was. It was one of the games in the Rangers series. I was driving home and listening to that feed, and Phil just starts screaming. He was like, "That's offsides." He's like, "Can't you see that's offsides? That's clearly offsides." And I'm like, "You're on the radio. No one can.
No one can see it's offsides.
No one can see it."
The radio. That's hilarious. All right, let's get going. That's
all right, Mike.
I will have this special handy dandy, and I will sound better with this special headset. But today, I will still sound like this.
Me than you.
Okay.
Yes, let's do it. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, July 3rd.
No. June 4th.
No.
Man, why do I want it to be July so much?
Take two.
Golly, sorry.
I can think of one reason, Eck.
Yeah, there's tons of reasons.
Yeah, because we're on vacation after that.
That's maybe. Let's. All right, Thursday, June 4th. Let's try that.
There you go.
Here we go. You can do it.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, June 4th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Dan Petru.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com or AlphaGeekRadio.com and TuneIn Radio, wherever finer radio podcasts are served. We're here. It's the day after Game 1. It's Thursday, and Game 1 was almost exactly the microcosm of the series I predicted within one game. That in my prediction blog that I wrote that I could see the Tampa Bay Lightning winning maybe the first two games, and then eventually the Hawks waking up and just saying okay and taking it over. And that's kind of what last night was. The Hawks did look a little disinterested, in my opinion. They did look a little bit like this is a letdown. We have played three really tough rivals to get here. Three teams that are very physical. Now we're playing a team that's not physical. That's a change. There were a lot of things you could tell that the Hawks just weren't mentally sharp right off the bat. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, they find their way and they come up with a huge victory. Dan, what were your thoughts on this one?
I was after we got off the air yesterday, I was thinking about this Blackhawks team, and like I said, being in this area, being in the Northeast, they keep reminding me of those dynasty year Yankees. It's like, hey, we're we're here, we're sleepwalking, we're down one, okay, we'll play 5 good minutes and win the game. Yeah. It just seems like they just turn it on and they turn it off, and Jonathan Toews has a lot of similarities to Derek Jeter, in my opinion. You know, he's not. Taves is never going to be the 120 point, 100 point scorer, but he does exactly what you need. And then when you need a little more from him, he goes a little farther. And when you need him to go a little farther, he goes a little farther.
Yeah.
You know, it's just amazing to watch this team. And in the salary cap era, where it's really hard to keep your role players and keep things together, I mean, this team has to be commended. And they didn't play. Tampa played really good until the third period, and then it's almost like we got a 1-0 lead. What do we do here? And they kind of got caught sitting back, and next thing you know, boom, boom, it's 2-1, and the Blackhawks steal a game, and that's just what they do.
I mean, it was the exact opposite of what I thought Game 1 was going to be. I thought Tampa was going to come out tight and then loosen up as the game went along. They jumped on the Hawks in the first few minutes. Killorn with a really nice deflection on that first goal, and then they played pretty well for the first and most of the second period. But you could see from the opening faceoff of the third that Chicago dominated puck possession, got most of the chances in the first 5 minutes. I don't think Tampa got the puck out of the zone more than 3 times. They were cycling the puck, and Chicago was, and they dominated the control of the puck, and they had most of the opportunities. And everybody points to the Callahan missed breakaway as the turning point. I think the turning point was essentially the mentality of that team entering the third period.
Yep.
They got scared, or they got conservative, up 1-0, thinking let's not make a mistake. And you just can't do that against the Hawks. They tried to play the same type of game they played against the Rangers in Game 5 and Game 7, and it doesn't work against the Hawks because if you give them one opportunity, they're going to jump on it. And in 2 instances, in 1 minute and 58 seconds, Teravainen, a third-line forward, scores a goal on a screenshot and then steals the puck away from J.T. Brown and gets it to Vermette for the game-winning goal. And in a game that Tampa dominated for most of it, Chicago wins. And now I think it's really the pressure's on Tampa in Game 2. They have to win that game. If they go down 2-0 in going back to Chicago, the series is over in 4 or 5.
Did you see the comments on on Toivo Teravainen? There were some really good ones. I mean, because he's definitely a third or fourth liner, but he's a really good player, and people on a lot of other teams, he would definitely be one of the players of the future that people would be praising and couldn't wait.
He's going to be a top 6 forward at some point.
Yeah, and couldn't wait till he got part of it. So he scored the goal, and he said his first reaction was, "Oh no, I'm going to have to do media now."
That was great.
I love that. I thought that was great to see, because there is such a media thing at the NHL finals. Everybody has to actually go to a table now. It's not just in the locker room. You have to go talk to people, and then Marian Hossa was just like, he said something about Teravainen saying, basically, I don't think the guy has a heartbeat. He's just cold. He's just Finnish cold, he called him. He's just completely, focused in and has that. And I've known some Finnish players like this that are just so businesslike. It's awkward. It's odd because there's
the same projection as like Assad, kind of getting pushed into the lineup slowly, getting his feet wet, getting a little more responsibility, and a couple of years from now, you're going to see him play a major role in the team.
Yeah, he's a top 6 forward next year. He's a guy who probably replaces Sharp on one of the top 2 lines, no doubt. I mean, it's a question of whether they want to play him up the middle or whether they want to play him on the wing. But this is a guy, and if you look at this as a sort of a primer to where teams are going to go in the future, maybe at the draft and in the next few years, you've got 2 incredibly skilled teams here. You got 2 teams in the Blackhawks and Tampa who have players. Teravainen's not a giant. He's just very quick, very skilled. Size doesn't seem to matter. Size doesn't matter with Tyler Johnson. And I think the mentality of that are going to go to other NHL teams, and you're going to see teams, regardless of size, drafting players at the NHL draft at the end of the month that might be 5'9" or 5'10", but have high-end skill.
I think it's an attitude, too. I mean, there are plenty of guys who are 6'3" and 6'4" in this league who hide on the half boards and do not drive to the net. It's an attitude, a willingness to get your nose dirty and get your butt to the net. And look, Zach Parise is no giant. That guy always gets to the net. It's all about a willingness to sacrifice yourself, pay a price, and get to the net. And look, it's hard to score on goalies nowadays, but there are always goal-scoring chances in that blue paint. You just have to be willing to pay a price for it. And you're seeing some of these guys, size be damned, willing to get their nose dirty, willing to take a hit, and they're getting rewarded for it.
No question. No question. And it's really going to be, it's the kind of, these are the kind of players that make me think that Chicago is not going to have this massive problem, like at the end of the year, that
Right.
people keep saying, Chicago, like I felt like the 2010 team was in a lot worse shape than this one. And I think that this one, and the 2010 team was a major rebuild, and they still managed to pull off and get back to the Stanley Cup Finals in a couple years.
Well, like I said yesterday, I mean, Chicago, first of all, they have a deep bench. Teravainen, guys like Ryan Hartman, former first-round pick Mark McNeil. They signed the kid Panarin out of the KHL. They have some players who they can bring into the lineup. They have some players like Andrew Shaw that can handle bigger roles. I think they'll be okay there. They also have the ability to go out in free agency and sign another guy like Brad Richards and
Right.
say, you want to take a 1 year for $1.5 million and have a chance at winning a Stanley Cup? Come to Chicago. They can maybe get guys on sweetheart deals.
Well,
Sign a Christian Ehrhoff for a year, like he signed with Pittsburgh for a year, if you want to win a Stanley Cup. They have that magnet there because they're going to be a contender, because they're still going to have, even if they trade off Bickle and Sharp and let Oduya walk in free agency, they're still going to have Kane, Taves, Hossa, Saad, and Seabrook, and Keith, and Yarmos.
well, what are they going to do with Seabrook? It sounds like his contract might get a little messy.
It depends on whether he wants to break the bank. If he wants to break the bank,
There was a report, I think, on Yahoo today that he wants Weber money and Subban length.
then he's gone.
Yep.
Then he's gone.
Who,
Right, he can't
Seabrook?
make more than Duncan Keith. He can't.
Oh, yeah.
They're paying Duncan Keith $5.5 million. Now, granted, it was on a 13-year deal or something
Right.
ridiculous like that. But they cannot play Seabrook or pay Seabrook, who is not as good a defenseman as Keith.
Correct.
Pay him $7.5 million. I don't care what the market is like.
Yep.
I don't think they'll do it. I don't think.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't think they will, but I also think this is a negotiation. I don't think it'll end up there. I mean,
Right, exactly. That's just they're just posturing right now.
that's what he's saying. And Seabrook, I don't think is going to expect to get paid more than Duncan Keith, and I don't think that anyone's gonna. I don't think that that's realistic.
Yeah, but if you look at the defensemen that have been signed over the last couple months and the ones who were signed in free agency last summer, Orpik, Niskanen, Leddy, Boychuk, the ones we talked about yesterday, they're all $5.5 to $6 million.
That's the going rate right now.
Seabrook is better than those defensemen.
Absolutely.
He's won if he wins 3 Stanley Cups. He's going to expect, even if it's a sweetheart hometown deal, he's going to expect to make more than those guys. So if he's $6.5 to $7 million, then it's getting to the point where you're paying him $1 million or $1.5 million more than one of the best defensemen in the league. And he's a good defenseman, but he's not one of the best defensemen in the league.
The market inflation now,
Right.
the market is saying, this type of defenseman is at least worth $6 million.
And I think what they'll do, Dan, is if the price gets ridiculous, they'll trade him because they can get value for him.
Oh, absolutely.
They can get a lot of value for him.
I mean, they can get a lot of value for him. He's a top. I mean, I guess the question will be where he wants to play. Because at the end of the day, if he wants, I think Seabrook has made more of a name for himself in the playoffs than he has in the regular season. As good defenseman he is, he's a great playoff defenseman. So but in the regular season, he's not a big time scorer, and he also is suspect defensively at times too. So there's issues there. And if he wants to stay, in Chicago, it's going to be up to him. I think there's definitely he can definitely price himself out if he wants to.
I have a nice home form right here. Right here.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice. I mean, he's a great fit anywhere.
He'd be great next to Hamonic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This year he played 82 games and scored 31 points, 8 goals, 23 assists.
Right.
That's
about what he is.
Yeah, he went from plus 23 last year to minus 3 this year.
Ooh.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that if he wants to stay in Chicago, then he's going to have to take less money and probably less term. It would probably end up being, if I had to throw a dart at it, 6 years, $6 million. Because $500,000 more than Duncan Keith is making is acceptable. It's sort of like what Malkin is making over Crosby. I think Malkin's making 9.5 and Crosby's making 8.7. So, or something. It's within $1 million, so it's acceptable based on inflation. But if he's making $7 million and he's making as much as Letang and Weber and Subban, then it's getting to the point of ridiculousness.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
No, it's hard to disagree there for sure. So where do we go from here in this series? I mean, Saturday night obviously becomes hugely important for Tampa if they're going to get anywhere. And my real feeling was that Tampa's best shot in the series was to surprise Chicago early, and they almost did it last night. And to get a couple games under their belt so that would extend the series, but it really did feel last night like the mentor and the student, didn't it?
Yeah.
It felt like that.
Mr. Miyagi, you know.
It just did. It felt like at the end of the day, it was just.
Tampa's inexperience showed. They sat back on their heels.
Yep.
They let Chicago take over the play in the third period. Chicago took advantage. Now I think Tampa has to play with a little more desperation. But the thing is, at very few opportunities when it was down 2-1 late in the third, Chicago got opportunities. I don't think Tampa can play the wide open style and go toe to toe with Chicago, because Kane, Taves, and Hossa, those guys will counterattack and will stab them in the heart. I think they're going to have to play this conservative, defensive checking game, but just capitalize on their opportunities. Stamkos had a few chances last night, couldn't convert. They didn't convert on their power play chances. They only got 1 goal. They need to score more than 1 goal.
Yeah. I think Chicago, if they're going to play, if Tampa wants to play this way, Chicago is just going to be patient and wait for a counterpunch.
That's what they have to do. And Chicago, no problem doing that. And last night we saw that. I mean, when you think about confidence, the Blackhawks are as confident as a team can be right now. They have no question in their mind that they can win any game at any time. They can come back from any deficit. They can hold any lead. They just have all this confidence. It's really going to take something massive by Tampa, like a 6-0 victory or something like that, to throw any kind of monkey wrench into Chicago, because they're completely, and even if they're down 3-1 in a series, I don't think the Hawks have any worries about it right now. They know that they can do what they have to do. It's rare you see a team with that kind of confidence.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, it's the kind of confidence that you get because you've won, 2 Stanley Cups in the last 5 years in a conference final. They've never been shy. They've never been. You can never accuse the Blackhawks of not being, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but full of themselves. They deserve to be full of themselves. They're one of the best teams in the league.
It's a confidence. It's an attitude.
Yeah, it's an arrogance.
It's a good arrogance. It's an arrogance that's, from a resume of success. They know exactly what they need to do, and they don't panic. There's no panic. They've seen every situation you can possibly see in the playoffs, and they never get fazed by it. Yeah, and that's what experience does.
Yeah, it's incredible. Did you guys see this last night? This was really funny. Let me get this up here if I can. It was the skate blade being lost last night by I think it was Seabrook, wasn't it? Let me see if I have this right now.
Well, I did see Chris Versteeg face plant against the post. That was.
Yeah, the thing about this is crazy. Let me see if I go right here. Sorry about that. I got it right here.
Well, while you're doing that, again, the interesting thing, the top 4 defensemen for the Blackhawks: Duncan Keith, 29 minutes 15 seconds; Seabrook, 26 minutes; Oduya, 23 minutes; Yarmolson, 22 minutes. And the 5-6 and Rundblad and Kaminsky played less than 10. Again, I think that if the series is close going into 5, 6, and 7, that's going to be a factor, but it wasn't last night.
No, definitely. Here it is. Here's the play. This is. See if I can get this straight here. This is Seabrook. Seabrook's skate Blake gets knocked off, and I have never seen as many skate blades get knocked off as I have in these playoffs. This is something that was always like a given. What's the deal? Is it just the lighter skates now or something that enables? You see these guys blocking. I saw somebody the other night block a shot in I think it was Rangers Game 7, where their blade just went flying because their blade actually took it. yeah, it's just kind of crazy that we're seeing all these skate blades go away.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the reason for the replaceable skate blade because you don't have to take the entire boot off and you can sharpen the blade. But they
Yeah.
have to come up with a better way for these blades to stay on, other than like I think it's a couple little set screws or a little buttons that that hold it in place. If they can come off, and I've seen, not once a game, but I've seen it in key situations where a guy is like hobbling on one skate, pushing himself with a stick to get to the or having a player push him, and it's ridiculous. I mean,
It's like he's in a canoe.
yeah, it's really. I mean, he's got no traction with the other foot to be able to push himself.
I wonder if they can make skates like they make like snowboards. Like how you kind of you lock your boot in, you snap in. I wonder if they can do something like that.
I think that the problem is, that just if you're blocked with all the people that are blocking shots, if you
Yeah.
put out there. And a skate blade, and your skate blade takes the brunt of that shot, nothing's going to hold it in place. I mean, it's just
That's true.
it's too thin of a thing in the first place. But yeah, we've definitely seen so many of them. It's so crazy. Also, big news today: Bob McKenzie is the 2015 winner of the Hockey Hall of Fame Elmer Ferguson Memorial Award. This is the award that went to our own Kevin Allen last year. Bob McKenzie wins it this year. I guess that means Mike, you'll win it next year if we continue. With the trend.
I can only hope. I'm getting my speech ready.
Good. I'll
and this is of course
I'll do a roast too. We'll do like a celebrity roast of Mike Agello.
I want to talk about Bob McKenzie for a bit because there's a lot of people in this hockey world that have been kind of awkward to me or strange to me over the years, or just mean to me, and other people who have been just ridiculous, and then some bloggers who have been silly. But Bob McKenzie's always been amazing. I mean, and he's been incredible from the very beginning of me doing this, and is always never and he is the god of the hockey media. There's no question about it. I mean, and if Bob, if there's a rumor out there, and Bob says it's a rumor, it's happening. He's the guy. Everybody trusts him implicitly. He has more connections than anyone else. But he still has time for people, and that's what I kind of respect about him. I mean, in the same, obviously Kevin last year. It's good to see guys like this getting awards, guys who are really legitimately good people. I mean, and Bob is one of the best people. Recently, I talked to him when Sam Fisher's wife died, and he contacted me via email and said, do you have Sam Fisher's phone number? I'd like to talk to him. Just little things like that you just probably even think about, but he's that kind of person. He's completely legit. I love talking to him at the finals. I know next week I'll sit down with him a couple times in media meals and talk to him. I grew up reading him in the Hockey News. He was the first thing you read in the Hockey News. So it's so cool. Him and Sam Fisher were the two people that I grew up reading in the Hockey News. And even though he's a very famous and very wealthy guy now and has done his job, he's still completely legit. I had one run-in with him years ago, and it was really interesting. And it was when I went on Sportsnet up in Canada, and I did television, and he was like, if you're doing TV, you got to do things my way, that kind of thing. And we got back and forth on it, and then it ended up becoming a good thing for us. We just talked it through, and it was we both realized that he was writing more blogs, I was doing television. It was weird how things were crossing over, and I said, I completely respect whatever he thinks I was doing if I was doing something wrong on TV, I respected it completely, and he, it was good. It was a good conversation, and he's written some great books too. So I just think that he's a phenomenal, recipient of this award. I mean, one of the best in my mind.
He's just genuine. What you see is what you get. And the first show I ever worked on out of college was NHL Tonight back in the day on ESPN2. Wow. And Bob, he was a contributor to that for a segment called The Great White North, and I used to have to work with him on that. And he was just, just such an, in a medium that can be, dealt with lots of egos, lots of attitude. He was just this genuine, charming, just nice guy, and just so easy to work with. And everything that you see on the screen and everything that you read is how he is in real life. So it's definitely
not everybody's that way. I mean,
I met him for the first time at the Leafs rookie tournament in London last September, and someone of his stature, I almost would have expected him to okay, well, I'm Bob McKenzie, I'm gonna get my interview, I'm gonna walk past you guys, and there was none of that. He was down to earth. He was I said hello, he said hello back. He was very somebody with that kind of status, you almost expect that, I'm better than you type of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
I never got that once from him. He was really nice. I mean, I saw him again at the Top Prospects game in St. Catharines in January and talked to him for a few minutes about a few of the prospects. And I know his son Sean, who covers the Leafs for Sportsnet. So it's I'm very happy that people like Kevin, people like Scott Morrison, people like Bob McKenzie are being recognized for their quality work over the years. I've read all of them, I've followed all of them, and I can only hope in the future to be anywhere close to being as good as them.
Exactly. I mean, Eric DeHashik's won this award too, so there's a lot of people who, and it was fun. Last year was so much fun going up to see this award be given and be invited by Kevin and my wife and I, spending the weekend at the Hockey Hall of Fame with Kevin and his family and stuff like that. It is amazing to see how much this means to the media people, and it's weird because, of course, Kevin's the first to say I'm not really in the Hall of Fame. I won the Ferguson Award, which is given out by the Hall of Fame, because media writers aren't. The Hall of Fame is for hockey players, and that's what he says. But this is the closest you can get to actually being in the Hall of Fame, and it's pretty wild to have your name mentioned and in the same breath with all these Hall of Famers, and just to walk around the Hockey Hall of Fame, which is really nice. Like the new Hockey Hall of Fame is pretty awesome, and I went years ago when it was in its old location, and the first time I ever went to the new location was this past year, and they really have set it up well. And that event was so cool because you walk around and it's closed off to anybody except for the people who are invited. And as you walk through the various halls, you go into one hall and it's like all the international trophies and international jerseys. And then at this event, there's like a woman there, carving meat and handing out shrimp. So it's like every hall was got another kind of great food thing set up, and like there were alcohol over in the in the like the goalie hall and all that stuff. It was really awesome. And yeah, I just think that Bob is so deserving, and it is I know how much it meant to Kevin last year when I was with him when he found out he won it last year this time during the finals, and it's pretty awe-inspiring to win that award. So, even to be around somebody who'd won it, it was pretty crazy. It was really cool. So I think that Bob's gonna, it obviously represents so well, and I really do, even though he's really become a TV person. In my mind, I still always think of him as a writer. I do.
Yep.
He is a writer because he was a writer for so many years. I mean,
he wrote for the Toronto Star, and I remember him with the Hockey News.
Growing up, Hockey News when I couldn't wait to get that article. I couldn't wait to get that in the mailbox.
I mean, isn't it crazy when you think back to the Hockey News? Like we had no way of getting even a show like we're doing right now. Would have been incredible to us at that point in time, just because we had the only news you could get was once a week. About anything besides your team, and it was about something that happened, a week ago. By the time you got it, it was 10 days old, but you were still just engulfing it, because it was news about the league, and Bob always had one of the first stories in there, and it was always really well written and interesting, and Kevin wrote for the Hockey News, and Dryden wrote for the Hockey News, and all these old writers, they were really good people.
Dick Beddoes, who was I think he's a Hall of Fame. He's a winner of the Elmer Fudd. I think he's in the Hall of Fame as well. And he wrote he wrote for one of the Hamilton newspapers, I believe, and he was always on the Maple Leafs broadcasts. One of these old guys who wore the hat, and he was always in the Hockey News. Wrote a column, and he would do sort of like a hot stove show after some of the Leaf broadcasts. That, I think, is like sort of what we're doing on a daily basis. But I think what's sort of missing, I remember I loved the Satellite Hot Stove League on Hockey Night in Canada, and they've sort of gone away from that. They still do like a rumors segment, but they used to devote the entire second intermission to it. And I think it's one thing that I wish they'd go back to, because I think everybody loved it.
Well, we can wear fun hats if you want to.
Yeah, there you go. I'll get a fedora. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have lots of funny hats in the next day or so. So I'll next week we'll have a good selection of silly hats.
Perfect.
Promise you that for sure. What's funny, interesting? I don't know if you guys saw the Tonight Show thing on the Stanley Cup Finals. It was pretty good. I mean, and not to show it here, but what I love the fact that hockey is getting mainstream attention like this. That it really. I mean, for a long time, I used to track this kind of stuff. Like if somebody on, Laverne and Shirley wore a hockey jersey, I would write it down in a little notebook. I love to track the idea of hockey in the mainstream culture. And the Tonight Show is one of these is obviously a huge thing and a big deal, and it's really cool to see that it's actually getting, that it's getting some play. I mean, Fallon.
Well, it helps that Fallon is a hockey fan.
It really does.
He's a big Ranger fan, I believe.
But I think that plays into it too, because it's like, yeah, he's a hockey fan, but the fact that he is a hockey fan is that, is the fact that it's more likely that the guy who gets the hockey, who is the Tonight Show host, is now a hockey fan than it was before. That's possible.
They've made it cool. It's Fallon. You look at some of the sports that are not the most mainstream sports. In this country, hockey and soccer are not mainstream sports, but now they're kind of cool. It's kind of there's just so much of the mainstream sports shoved down your throat everywhere. The places where you can you almost you can get away from all the all the horrible stories in the NFL, people getting suspended and all, Deflategate and all that stuff. You can actually get away from all that by coming to some of these other sports.
And last night the report was that the overnight ratings were 4.23, which was the second highest ratings since 1997.
I was surprised they were that good. That's a good number.
Yeah, for Chicago, understandably, I think that their ratings were a 28 in Chicago, which is incredible.
Massive.
But they were really good in Tampa, and with a smaller market, non-traditional market like Tampa, and they may hate me saying that, but that's really what they are, to have the ratings that high. The highest rating was Boston-Chicago 2 years ago, and that game went into overtime. I think it went into double or triple overtime. So getting that kind of rating for Game 1 on NBC is a really good thing. The only thing I was a little curious about is the fact that Games 3 and 4 in this series are on NBC Sportsnet and not on NBC, which I think
they did that last year. They did that they did that last year too, which it's disappointing. But
it's on Monday and Wednesday, Dan. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not like you're preempting the blacklist or something. It's like
yeah. I don't know what it is. I mean, what it probably is? It's probably more designed to get people to watch NBC Sportsnet.
I agree. I think it's hey, let's get them a couple big ratings.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said by that. And the funny thing is too, the non-mainstream media will be like, oh, we can't find that network. Look, it's 2015.
Yeah.
You don't know where NBC Sports is on your cable. You're an idiot. It's just that simple.
No, exactly. And I mean, ABC has ESPN. They're connected too, and we saw when Monday Night Football went to ESPN, right? That was a big deal. But ESPN is so huge, it doesn't much matter. NBC.
But even them, for example, with they own the SEC network, they would purposely put a game you'd want to watch on ESPN on SEC to to get that rating, to move that audience to that.
Exactly. It's to broaden the base, and I think that's what they're doing. And fortunately it's games 3 and 4. It's not going to be the Stanley Cup's not going to be decided there. It's going to be decided, or hopefully not, or maybe hopefully it is. I mean, maybe by this time next week it's all over. Who knows? But I would still be surprised. I don't think this is a 4-game series. I don't. But anything's possible. It really is a game-to-game type scenario, and that these playoffs feel like that more than ever. It feels like every game in these playoffs has not had multiple winners from the game before, which is usually not the case. But I feel like anything can happen at any point.
And very smartly, the NHL and the NBA aren't stepping on their toes. The NBA opens up Game 1, and Game 2 for this series is Saturday. Game 2 for Golden State and Cleveland Sunday.
Yeah, guys, it's so bad.
Yeah.
And Mike, I think. You guys log out for a second, and I'll come back on if you could, because it sometimes fixes it. I don't know. I've been trying all my tricks here, which is changing cameras and stuff like that, hasn't been working. So I apologize. I don't know we still know what's going on with that echo. We're trying to figure it out with Google and see what's going on, but it's a new technology, so I apologize for that.
It was good. It was good for a while. I don't know what the heck was going on.
Yeah, and then it got to the point where you would really like it. There's the echo that's just you like in a small like plate reverb room, and then there's you like suddenly at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Like it's a
And
totally
now it sounds great, but
now
let's
it
see.
sounds fine.
What I was saying was that the game, the NBA and the NHL are alternating basically Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They're not stepping
Yeah.
on each other's toes.
The
So
NBA is always Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. They always are. They always have been.
right, and that's what they're doing. So I think the last game of the final would be I think it's the 17th if it goes 7. But so
The other thing that hasn't been mentioned much is Teravainen. Basically last night came out and talked about Chemo teaming him and what he's meant to him.
Yeah.
And Chemo is not getting the ice time here. It's a shame. You wanted to see him win a Stanley Cup. I wanted to see him play the game he wins the Stanley Cup in. But if nothing else, it is definitely wonderful for a guy like Teravainen to have Chemo teaming around. I mean, Chemo is just as like I said before. I mean, I've been around Chemo a lot, and I've met Chemo. I've run into Chemo in funny places. I ran into him one time waiting in line in Great Adventure theme park. And it was the funniest thing because we were both getting these fast passes things, because it was my daughter's birthday and she wanted to go to the theme park, and we really, it was really crowded, so we gave in and we bought the fast pass thing, which is like the worst thing in the world. It really just shouldn't be allowed to be had. But you know what? I did it anyway. So but before you buy the fast pass, which gets you through the lines a little bit quicker, just a little bit, you have to watch a movie. So I go and they put you into this movie about how Fast Pass works. So I'm standing in a dark room, with me and another guy and his son, and we're watching this movie about Fast Pass. And then the lights come on, and this guy turns to me. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" And I didn't know who the heck it was, and it was Chemo Demon. And I'm like, "Chemo, what's going on?" Yeah, and he was just there with his family. Introduced him to my family, and that was great, and he was just totally down to earth. So we ran into him a bunch of times. Ended up playing a bunch of like games of chance with him and his younger daughter, and me and my son. We were trying to win things and throwing balls at bottles and stuff like that. But Chemo is just like, he's legit. He's a family person, and he's a perfect mentor for any Finnish kid coming over because he's been through this war for such a long time. And Teravainen right now, does appear incredibly immature when you hear the things he's saying. He seems like he is a young kid, not immature in a bad way, just
naive, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
He's like, wait, it's almost like, hey, why am I here?
Yeah, he's
baby.
he's like a second dad to me for me because my real dad is in Finland. Teravainen says, that sounds like something that like a youth sports player would say, like not like an NHL player. But the goal he scored last night was a smart goal. I mean, it was not. It was just he really just he designed it beautifully, and the way he shot it quickly, and when Bishop wasn't set yet, it was kind of a brilliant. It was a real goal scorer's goal.
But that move, that play he made to that little poke check on JT Brown there was brilliant as well.
I mean, honestly, I couldn't fault Bishop for either one of the goals because he didn't see Teravainen's goal. He didn't see the shot. He didn't move.
Yeah.
And on Vermette's goal, the puck hit the junction of the crossbar in the post and deflected off into the net. So it was a perfect.
Yeah, it was
shot.
perfect. It was a deflection too. I mean,
Bishop was not the reason that Tampa Bay lost.
He was fine last night.
Yeah, he was fine.
No, I thought Tampa was good in general. I mean, I don't think Tampa can play much better than that against Chicago. I mean, that to me, if they can play that game again, they'll win a couple games. If they play that game, they will win a couple because Chicago won't be able to pull this off every time.
Yeah, they gotta convert on Crawford. I mean, that one Stamkos play, I think it was in the second period, that Killorn centered from behind the net, and Stamkos shot in one motion, didn't pause, and Crawford made an incredible right pad save. You've got to score those goals. I mean, they should have been up by more than 1-0 going in the third. They should have had to depend on Callahan to score on a breakaway to give them insurance, and once they didn't do both of those, then they were susceptible to one mistake or one bad goal, and that's what happened.
Exactly. Let's talk about Mike Reilly for a second. Mike Reilly is soon to be a UFA because he's not going to sign. Looks like with the Columbus Blue Jackets, who really want to sign him.
Yep.
And I think really thought they could sign him earlier on this year, but now it seems like he's going to be a free agent, and there's a lot of teams interested in him. It makes you wonder. Some of these guys, it's not a bad move. I mean,
it's not.
I mean, what most of these guys aren't going to play their first year anyway, so. why not just hold out, and not sign a contract right away, and then end up picking where you want to go? I mean, he's been rumored to go back to Minnesota, where his ex-teammate's playing, and of course he's from Minnesota, right? And everybody's from Minnesota has to be rumored to go to Minnesota at some point.
Of course.
That's the rule. So, but I don't think that's the place he's going. I mean, it's possible, but I really heard 3 teams, and although it doesn't. Elliot Friedman has a little different list. So my list is are the Kings, the Rangers, and the Sabres mainly. Those, and with the Leafs in there as well, but mainly those 3 teams. The Leafs possibly.
Yeah. I think the Leafs are in there because the Leafs are in on any opportunity.
Yeah, right. They're going to be involved in everything. And this is something that really could help them too, and give them some options as far as who they can move around.
Right. But the thing is that Reilly is the perfect scenario for the cap-strapped team, like Los Angeles, like the Rangers, like the Kings, like the Blackhawks, excuse me, because he can only max out at $925,000. It's going to be a 3-year deal at max for $925,000. Right. So there will be bonuses in the deal, like there was with Justin Schultz when he left Anaheim and signed with Edmonton. But the base contract is $925,000, and they'll have to deal with the bonuses afterward, depending on how he plays. But I mean, for a team that's got a Slava Voyanov dead money at $4 million, or a team that has to replace Johnny Oduya, or a team that's probably going to want to trade a 40-year-old Dan Boyle making $4.5 million, a guy who's capable, who's going to not even top $1 million, is somebody you go after and you make a big pitch for, and I think he will.
You have to find value out of your entry-level contracts. You need a couple guys on your team that you can give reliable minutes to that can contribute making on an entry-level deal. You just have to. That's the way it is now in the cap days.
No question.
That's what teams can get production out of guys on ELCs.
Yeah, I always said you need at least one of your top 6 forwards, one of your top 4 defensemen, and then a couple role players. Be in there, and if that's the case, then you're in great shape, and then you're not going to be in cap issues. But if you have all of your top 6 forwards are not on their entry level contract, you're going to be cap strapped, and that's where it's kind of what we're seeing with Chicago. And that's when we talk about Teravainen coming in. He's a guy who doesn't have to be on that contract. So
now what Columbus can do, is they hold his rights until August 15th. It's not July 1st. It's August 15th for these college players who decide to go free agency. They can trade his rights up until August 15th, and they might do that. Like if there's a team that determines
I think they will do that.
Right, they can get a 3rd-round pick, second.
Might as well, exactly. Get something back for it.
And I know that Elliot Friedman reported last week, because there's a couple players out there like this. Another one is Michigan's leading scorer Zach Hyman, who is a kid from Toronto, who was a draft pick of the Florida Panthers, and he sees Barkov and Huberdeau and all these young kids in Florida and thinks he's not going to have a chance to break through for a couple years, whereas on other teams he might have a chance. So he has told them he's not going to sign with them. And Friedman reported that teams like Detroit and I think it was San Jose and Toronto, where he's from, are definitely interested in him, but it might be a situation where they'd have to throw a draft pick at the Panthers to get the rights to talk to him. So those situations will be interesting deep into the summer if they don't get resolved earlier.
Well, is this a good move, Dan? Is this a good move for these guys? I mean, it feels like some of these guys, it actually is a good move for them.
I think you have to look at the draft position too. If you're drafted 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, not everyone at 18 is ready to play in the NHL, obviously. And there's enough players who are 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks who went to college and 3 years later are not the same players they were. If they were in the draft at 20 or 21, they'd be first round talent. So now they have the ability to see the situation of where they are and actually have a little leverage. There's nothing wrong with that. They outplayed their draft position, so they can look at the situation they're in. If the team is that they draft them in the 5th round wants to give them 5th round money, they have other options now. And I think it doesn't happen a lot, but I don't mind the player having a little leverage for outperforming their draft position, or maybe being a late bloomer.
This is the trade-off for teams drafting NCAA products.
I agree.
It's 4 years.
Yep.
You know, with Canadian junior teams, with CHL players, it's 2 years. If you don't sign them within 2 years, they go back into the draft. With European players and with the NCAA players, it's till they decide they're going to leave school in terms of NCAA, or 4 years. And if they decide to leave and the other team either doesn't offer them what they want, then they have the freedom to go someplace else. And I think that's a good thing for them.
I think it helps the team too, because you can say, okay, here's a kid that we like. He's a bit of a project. Let's draft him later in the draft. Let him go to college. We don't have to worry about him a couple of years. And then if he hits our potential, then all of a sudden we got a steal. Like, for example, with the Islanders and Anders Lee, everybody kept saying he was going to play football at Notre Dame. He was going to play football at Notre Dame. And he kept saying, no, I want to play hockey. And he convinced the Gart Snow that I am going to play hockey at Notre Dame. They took him in the 5th round, and look at him now. He's a little bit older. You know, he's 24, but it took him a little while longer to get to the NHL. But now, you know, he's an RFA this year. He's going to get a nice contract.
Yeah. They're not going to have to spend 2 years in the AHL with these NCAA players. Like
everybody's path is different. Everybody's path is different,
exactly.
Especially once you get out of the first round. Once you get towards the end of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds, everybody's path to the NHL is going to be different.
Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I mean, there is something to a team giving. You know, I always think a player should have some sort of thankfulness about being drafted by a team. You know, like that team did spend a draft pick on them, but I guess in the later rounds it's not as big of a deal, and even in the early rounds, I mean, we've seen this happen with other players, and it's happening more and more every year, and it's a common thing now and I think sometimes these players get more value than they actually deserve just because they create this whole buzz around them. And
it's funny you say that because sorry.
No, go.
Oh, it just with like the Lightning, for example, they have a kid, Matthew Pekka, who they drafted in the 6th round. Little small, actually kind of like Tyler Johnson size. You know, he went to Quinnipiac, and what did he do in 4 years? Become their all-time leading scorer. Yeah. Go to the Frozen Four 3 times. Go to the Frozen Four tournament 3 times. Made a national championship game, and you know, all of a sudden now he completely outperformed his 6th round draft pick slot. I thought he might use the loophole, but Tampa was able to sign him.
Yeah, you know, and it's a good thing for for teams to. I mean, look, this is a bonus for the scouts to make these picks, and I think that the scouts end up getting screwed if the player does outperform. So that's a weird thing.
Right.
No,
you're exactly right.
Finding these guys is a big deal, but if you can't sign them and then they actually do better, then this is a dream. I mean, for the guy who's drafted in the 6th round to suddenly be that good is what scouts make a living on. So,
but teams do have a recourse and not be left empty-handed. I mean, Anaheim, I think, was rather short-sighted in not trading Justin Schultz's rights instead of trying to sign him and then just letting him go to Edmonton for nothing. Whereas they could have recouped he was a 2nd-round pick, I believe. They could have gotten a 2nd-round pick from a team that was interested.
Yeah, a 2nd-round pick is a different world altogether. But the Echo's overtaking us again. I think we're going to have to call the show. But it's 2 o'clock anyway. Guys, we do really appreciate it. Enjoy being back again tomorrow. Hi, and possibly I think tomorrow. We'll see. But Dan, as always, have a great weekend. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you soon.